There's this unspoken hall of fame when it comes to anime that many people think can never be reached again. You got your classics, Cowboy Bebop and Evangelion, and you got your series that everyone loves like Death Note and Code Geass. Very, very seldom does a new anime show up that busts the doors to this hall of fame straight open and seats itself comfortably among the kings. We are in one hell of an era, people. We have managed to reach a point where a new king can gaze down their nose at us. Because today I want to talk about one of my favorite anime I've seen in a long time. An anime that right after watching, I immediately rewatched and snuggled into my top 15 anime of all time with ease. I want to talk about an anime that aired last year that went under a lot of people's radar because it was only available on Amazon, and it's an anime that's far more mature than the generic shonen style that really gets popular and goes mainstream. Today, I want to talk about Vinland Saga, and I want to tackle it from a completely different angle than I've ever seen anyone talk about it. A lot of people just didn't talk about it because it's not one of those hype shonen that's gonna pull in bajillions of views. And B, the people that did talk about it are coming from a perspective that, well, since people haven't really seen it, I can't spoil anything, and therefore it's gonna be like a generic recommendation. Oh, dope characters, dope story. Oh, yeah, I just orgasmed 17 times. You know it's good, fam. So this isn't necessarily gonna be a recommendation video, but it's also not necessarily going to be a spoiler video. I want to talk about the various themes in the series that I think that you can appreciate whether you've seen the show or not. If you haven't seen it, then I do think that this will get Vinland Saga into your must-watch list, and if you have seen it, then I think the subtle things I'm going to be talking about are going to hit you harder. There will be super slight spoilers as far as different characters that are going to get introduced and different themes that are going to be approached, but I'm not spoiling the final episode, and if you saw Vinland Saga, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I've been kind of straying away from anime analysis-ish videos recently because even though everyone has their own approach, for the most part, analyses are attacked from the same direction. Whereas my meme, more personality-ish stuff, where I get interspecies reviewers to be rated the #1 anime of all time on my anime list, I feel like that's something only I can do. So, being that a lot of you have been asking me to bring the more analysis-style videos back, I will do analyses if I feel like no one has talked about it in that way, and it's something that I can inject myself into as well. Aight? Good. Now, if you've seen Vinland Saga, I'm certain you want to read the manga because essentially the first 4 episodes of Vinland Saga are a prologue to the full 25 episode season, and the full 25 episodes is basically a prologue to the greater story that takes place further, where we really see who Thorfinn is. Thorfinn, the protagonist of Vinland Saga, is only in the baby stages of his development as far as the anime goes. Now, I have not read all the manga, and I will not spoil any of the manga, but if you're interested in picking it up, I have good news for you. This video is sponsored by Bookwalker. Bookwalker is Kadokawa's official ebook manga store with over 14,000 volumes of manga, and it is the ultimate go-to place to pick up anything. They have a lot of really popular titles that I'm sure you recognize, like, I don't know, or maybe in fact you haven't heard of it. Attack on Titan, it's a little known show. Most people haven't heard of it before. They have things like Konosuba and pretty much anything you can imagine in your wildest dreams. Today, I mostly wanted to talk about why Bookwalker's the GOAT because of Vinland Saga, and they have that entire franchise on there. So, if you are interested, there's a pretty epic St. Patrick's Day sale going on. So, link to Bookwalker in the description of the video. Feel free to hop on over there for the discount on your everyday ebook manga needs that you can read on mobile and on your desktop. Thanks, Bookwalker, for sponsoring this video. Now, let's get into the meat and potatoes of Vinland Saga. I feel like this needs to be said, and there's always going to be someone in the comments that's going to be like, no, she didn't mention that the animation is awesome. So, to cut to the chase, the animation, direction, art style, storyboarding, and pacing are all absolutely god tier. It's made by Wit Studio, the people that made Attack on Titan, and that anime is eyegasm levels of beautiful, and they did absolute justice to Vinland Saga 2. Alright, you're not getting any bargain basement garbage anime adaptation here. Nah, fam, this is first class anime adaptation. It's gorgeous, and that's aside from everything else I'm going to be talking about in the video. So, as a really quick, slightly more generic introduction, if you're not familiar with the series, it takes place in a more Viking-esque setting than your average anime. We follow the story that actually takes place in history with certain twists. I mean, Prince Canute was in fact a real dude, and he is known in history as a tyrannical ruler. So when he's introduced as this shy kid, we're like, uh-oh fam, what's going on here? So it plays into the historical themes of what goes on very, very well. We tackle the wars going on between England, France, Denmark, and how the Vikings played a role in everything. So even from a historical perspective, the series is pretty much awesome as well. But like any good story, we're not following the massive event that took place in these huge wars. No, we are following characters. We are following human beings and their lives. And that's what makes this show so fantastic. So there are 5 core characters to Vinland Saga. There's Thorfinn, the main character, Askeladd, Thorkill, and Canute. And it's these 5 characters that shape the entire story into what it becomes. The series is called Vinland Saga because Thor's the father of the protagonist and the biggest mad lad of all time keeps telling his son and the people around him about this legendary land called Vinland, a place where it's forever green, where there is no snow, where the plains and animals are all of dreamlike quality, and it's a land free of war and slavery. This became the title of the entire series because the most important theme in the entirety of Vinland Saga, and it's something I've never seen anyone talk about before, is the idea that Vinland exists. And I'm not necessarily talking about Vinland, because Vinland does not exist, but it's the value of the dream of a better future in a different faraway land, where something can exist somewhere else, and that's where things are perfect. So we have to strive to make it to that point, even if that point doesn't exist. Now, there are some people that believe in this place called Vinland, and they're gonna try to find it. They're gonna try to create their own Vinland by going there, and there are other people that know it doesn't exist, but whether it exists or not, it doesn't matter. It's that dream of a perfect future somewhere, even if you know it's false. That's enough to pull you out of your deepest, darkest moment. In episode 2, Thor's family finds a runaway slave from somewhere else, and they're nurturing him, or at least trying to nurture him back to health. They fear it's too late, and he's about to die, and that's when Thor starts telling him about Vinland. Thor's is amazing, because his character arc spans the entire story, even though he's not in most of it. The power of his ideals are so strong, every character that meets him is completely moved by what this absolute Chad believes. Why does he tell this slave about Vinland? A mystical land with no wars or slavery, a land that's green and luscious. Why does he do any of that? He knows the slave is never gonna get to Vinland, but even though it's never mentioned in the series, and Thor's is the biggest supporter of this Vinland place, Thor's doesn't believe it exists either. Thor's believes that the ideal of Vinland is far more important than the reality of Vinland itself. Now, this is the most important theme in the entirety of the series, because people are hired to try and assassinate Thor's, and it turns out, yeah, Thor's is the most powerful goddamn warrior of all time. This guy is like wrecking people back and forth with his bare hands. There's a ship of 30 men. He gets on the ship and beats the crap out of all of them. When he knocks one into the river, he throws him an oar so he can hold on to it and float so he doesn't drown. This man takes out 30 guys, and when their leader later says, so, he beat up all 30 men. How many deaths? None, sir. And he's like, wait, no deaths? Are you sure? Do you need to count again? It's unprecedented that someone like Thor's can actually exist. And when Thor's beats his opponent in a sword fight, and this is an opponent that was trying to kill him, mind you, he doesn't want to pull the finishing blow. And when he says, why, Thor's? You are the strongest warrior I've ever met. He said, I am not a strong warrior. If I was a truly strong warrior, I wouldn't need to use a sword at all. And I don't think he meant kung fu. A true warrior is someone who can avoid battles, not one who charges head fast into them and destroys other people's lives. Thor's isn't in the story for the most part, but it's his ideals and the impact he has on characters like Thorfinn and Askeladd that truly crafts one hell of a story. For reasons I shall not bequeath now for spoiler reasons, Thorfinn and Askeladd do not get along. Thorfinn, in fact, joins Askeladd's little band of pirates because he hopes to become strong enough to best Askeladd in a duel and kill him. He wants to kill him in an honorable way, also in his own twisted understanding of Thor's ideals, to follow in his father's footsteps. His father is a noble warrior, and therefore he must be one as well. He can't slit his throat in the night. He has to do it with honor and dignity. Now, the irony behind Thorfinn's character throughout the entirety of this season of Vinland Saga is, in his naive understanding of Thor's ideals, he's doing the opposite of what Thor's would want him to do. Thor's wants him to find Vinland. The Vinland in his heart, obviously, not a Vinland in reality. He wants him to find this land of luscious peace. But due to Thorfinn's misunderstanding of what makes a true warrior, he thinks he's following his father's ideals by in fact becoming the thing that his father would detest most. Askeladd, on the other hand, is a man of seemingly no morality. He's an individual whose backstory is revealed in around episode 20 of the story, and while he is a truly horrible individual and a person that you should be scared of, he is hands down my favorite character in the story. He is the most complex character I've seen in years, and the way the story frames the dynamic between Askeladd and Thorfinn is also amazing. Every time Thorfinn loses a fight, for example, and drops his knife, in the reflection of the blade as it's falling, you see the past. You see the twists and turns of his life that brought him to this point. And whenever Askeladd is speaking, you are looking at him through a camera angle in the corner of the house, where you're looking at him ponder through a spiderweb, knowing that he has some really crazy master plan, and he's in the center of all the madness that's about to unfold. Vinland Saga frames its characters in fantastic lights through the visual storytelling, giving you more of an inkling into exactly what's going on screen. When Thorfinn's knife is falling and he's flashing back to everything that brought him here, he's reassessing everything that made him who he is today. And when Askeladd is pondering, you know that he is the spider in the center of the spiderweb, and all of his selflessness is probably a ruse. Now, I'm not going to spoil episode 24 for very obvious reasons, but Askeladd's finale is one of the greatest in the history of anime, and I will always remember Askeladd as one of my favorites. But what's really fantastic about Askeladd is how he ties into the overall narrative and themes of Vinland Saga even better than you would think he would. You think he's a glance at a cruel, sinister, planning individual who, with big brain alone, is making a huge impact into the world with his wacky strategies and his crazy ideas, where he allies with people he actually detests for personal gain and will be happy to discard them later. But when you actually see his backstory, you realize his character is a lot more ingrained into the thematic presence of Vinland Saga, because he's not just an intricate part to the world. He's not some antagonistic force that is causing Thorfinn to react in different ways and development. He's all that and more. He, as an individual, is probably the most important character in the first season of Vinland Saga, and even though I won't spoil his backstory, his mother was a slave, exported from the land of Wales, and she had a miserable life. She was always ill, she was always frail, she was mistreated by the Viking that bought her, who happens to coincidentally be the father of her son, Askeladd. Askeladd had a tough upbringing as well. This guy's called Askeladd, which translates to ash and dirt, because he was always covered in soot when he was doing all the tasks that his mother needed to do, plus all the tasks that he needed to do, and also care for her and try to keep her alive and healthy. But despite the troublesome environment he was growing up in, his mother always had a smile on her face. She was always happy. For some odd reason, until she completely snapped, her mental fortitude was astonishing. And it's because she would always tell him the story, a legendary story about how their great-great-grandfather, Artorius, the King of Wales, the hero that will someday return and liberate them and save their people. This King of Britannia will one day come back and save us all. We just need to keep hoping and keep believing. She put so much faith into Artorius, the hero who will return, she was able to keep up a genuine, happy facade, even though she was in the worst environment possible. It was a story she would tell so often, in Askeladd's words, even he started to believe it, and he started to gain hope for the hero Artorius' return. If this sounds familiar to you, it's because it's the same exact theme as Thor's trying to reach Vinland, this perfect, beautiful, bountiful land that does not exist. It's a beautiful and also tragic message in this entire story about focusing on something that, even though it's not real, it can bring you this warmth and happiness and can push you to survive and thrive day to day. It can make you a better person and a more positive person, even though it in itself is completely false. When something was about to happen to his mother and he realized that he had to go and save her and put his life on the line, that's, in his words, when he realized that the hero Artorius was never going to come. That is when he cast aside that entire ideal, and that is when he became the really cruel, vindictive Askeladd he is today. Compare him to Thors for a moment. He and Thors both had the same idea of some perfect ideal of a future. Whether it's Vinland or it's Artorius, something you can hold on to and something that you can become. The difference is, once they both grew wise enough to realize that this ridiculously beautiful ideal of a future is fake, they took very different routes. Thors took the route of hammering in that, no, it is in fact real. Even though he wouldn't delude himself, perhaps he can delude other people and give them some sort of warmth in their hearts. And Askeladd went the complete other direction and said, Artorius is not coming. He is no hero. And I am not gonna take his mantle as a hero. There are no heroes. This led to a life where Thors built a beautiful family and was surrounded by people that he adored and that adored him, even not living in luxury and living as a humble individual. And then there was Askeladd, a man who was constantly chasing riches, a man who was amassing wealth and power, a man who became one of the most powerful people in all of Denmark through his conniving alone. But this man had no friends. This man detested everyone around him. This man had everything, yet had less than nothing. nothing at the same time. That's another reason why the final episode of Askeladd's character in Vinland Saga was so impactful. It was a scene where he finally chose something else above himself for the first time. And it's a scene where for the first time in his life, he was proud of himself. And he urged Thorfinn to go seek out Vinland. I could talk about the evil machinations of Askeladd for days on end. How he would do the most horrible things in the names of other people to get the prince to become a stronger individual. This man is self-centered and terrifying, and he is no hero. Now, the two other characters that I wanted to mention in the story were Canute and Thorkill, because they're two other angles on the same premise, of course, because that's what makes a show amazing. Prince Canute is someone who's introduced to the story as a very weak-willed, lily-livered prince who people confuse as a girl, and who likes doing things like cooking, which is unbecoming for a prince! Despicable! Yet, as the story goes on, he begins to realize that he has to really start taking matters into his own hands. He comes to this very drastic conclusion of what God is, and this state of mind that he puts himself in gives him the wherewithal to gain a tremendous amount of charisma and confidence, even though obviously he as a person is still the same person. It's only that one little mindset twist that gives him an entirely different, quite frankly frightening persona that manages to give him some of the most powerful men holding up his banner behind him. While as far as being a king or a prince, this change in his mannerisms was definitely for the better, on an individual level, it's clearly not the case. He was a much happier person before. He was a much more lighthearted, good-natured guy, and not some sort of terrifying presence that will become one of the most tyrannical rulers in history. He had a priest teaching him all these different ways of God and how to understand God and how to serve God, and until this point, he knew that God was gonna save the day in the end. Messiah was gonna come. We have to all be good people, sing Kumbaya around the campfire, and things are gonna be wonderful. And because of this, he was shy, he was timid, and he never really wanted to step out of his comfort zone to do anything. But once he saw this war-torn battlefield where people were dying left and right, where his closest comrades met their fates, being deceived by other former comrades, he came to the really twisted realization that God is not gonna save the day for him. He has to take it into his own hands, and he's not gonna wait for God to eventually bring them to some sort of paradise. He is going to make that paradise, because God ain't coming. Fascinating how this lines up very well with the previous two philosophies I just talked about. There's the Thor's approach of the land that doesn't exist, there's the Askeladd approach about the hero that will never come, and then there's the Canute approach of the God that doesn't care. Again, following Canute's new understanding, he became a much more terrifying person, but lost so much of himself and so much happiness on the way. The only one who actually seemed to have it figured out in order to make your life more valuable and the people around you happier was Thor's, the one who made believe he believed in a fake paradise. I briefly mentioned these four characters until now, without spoiling anything. Thor's, Askeladd, Canute, and Thorfinn, who's absorbing every bit of information he is seeing from these three monoliths and crafting his own twisted understanding of what it all means, where he himself needs to figure it out on his journey. And finally, time to talk about best girl, not best girl of this anime, no. Not best girl of 2019, no. Best girl of all time, Thorkill the Tall. Every scene Thorkill is on screen, I could not stop salivating. This man's confidence and charisma were beautiful. He was defending the London Bridge, and when the Danes came and said, "Why have you betrayed us and gone to the other side? Is it for money? We'll give you double." He's like, "Nah, fam, I'm not gonna be on the side of a battle that knows they're gonna win." Ha ha ha! Then proceeds to throw logs and boulders at their ships, single-handedly annihilating an entire fleet. This man is a beautiful man. People betrayed an enemy force just because they knew they were gonna be going up against Thorkill to go join Thorkill. And then Thorkill wipes out all of them, saying, "How dare you ruin my chances of a fun battle by wanting to join me." Thorkill had a hostage, and he was ambushed. So he released the hostage to the people ambushing him, and then said, "Okay, now that we released the hostage, let's fight." And they were like, "Wait, what? You want to fight after you release the hostage?" "Yeah, we figured you could fight at full power if you're not worried about injuring our hostage." Thorkill steals the show every moment he is on screen. And this man has the pure, wholehearted Viking philosophy that we begin to start acclimating to in every single Viking show, whether it's a show like Vikings or a show like Vinland Saga. The idea of the greatest warrior that dies on the battlefield gets the better spot in Valhalla, the heaven of heroes. This man loves fighting, loves killing, and he doesn't mind putting himself at risk risk because if he dies on the battlefield trying his best, well then, this guy's making it to the top. The Viking philosophy is also very fascinating. This idea of Valhalla allows these crazy warriors to do even crazier things without worries for repercussion. Worst thing that'll happen, they die on the battlefield, which is technically the best thing that could happen. It makes these ridiculous battles take place, but with smiles on the Vikings' faces. Everyone knows to stay away from Thorkill the Tall. This guy is a one-man army that people do not think they will ever survive. He could throw a javelin across a valley and pierce 3 enemy soldiers. He walks around wielding these 2 massive battle axes that no one can even get close enough to him to land a scrape on the guy. And when they do, it'll just make him smile wider. Someone tries to stab him, so he lets him stab him through his palm so he could grab his hand and just smash him around like a sack of potatoes for 10 minutes saying, "Hey, you're pretty good." Thorkill's pure enjoyment of the situation makes him not only one of the greatest anime characters to witness, but the best girl in all of anime. It's the ultimate passion of Megumin's explosions, but it's every moment of every day when it comes to Thorkill the Tall. And no, he's not just a fantastic character because of the sheer badassery he adds to the story. It's not because he brings this positive twist on everything, and it's not even that he's actually shrewd and intelligent behind the scenes, even though he doesn't really need to think that much for what he usually does. It's because of the impact this guy has on everything. Turns out he knew Thor's a while ago. They were the 2 strongest fighters on the Vikings fleet before Thor's abandoned to start a nice happy life in a much more humble town. Thorkill was always upset because Thor's was the only man he ever met that was actually stronger than he was. When Thor's was abandoning the Vikings and running away, Thorkill actually found him. Thorkill actually wanted to stop him. Thor's gave him an ultimatum. He said, either I'll beat you right now, or you could join me. You could run away with me. We could start a new life in some humble little town. And Thorkill was like, "Nani?" and attacked him and got clobbered in an instant. Thorkill, after many, many battles where he's lost fingers and he lost an eye in previous bouts, says at one point to Thorfinn, the only thing in his life that he truly regrets is that he didn't follow Thor's that one day. This is the Viking that saw infinite battles, that won infinite battles, that is gonna get one hell of a spot in Valhalla. That was all within his grasp, but the one impossibility is turning back time and following Thor's, because Thor has found the true way to be a warrior. And even if you look at all these other Vikings that believe in going to Valhalla, their belief in Valhalla gives them the high they need to pick a good fight. But at the same time, when going up against a monster like Thorkill that they know they're gonna lose, opponents just snap in front of him. They completely get mental breakdowns when they see this giant monster approaching. Why do they care? They'll fight the strongest warrior, and if the strongest warrior kills them in a valiant battle, then they'll get a high place in Valhalla. Is it that they don't believe enough? Is it that they are just deluding themselves into believing it so that they can have an excuse to pillage, plunder, and cause terror? While they're believing in Valhalla, their lives are happier. They are proud of their achievements, they're proud of what they do, and they don't have remorse for killing opponents on the battlefield because, "You're welcome, I killed you, you're going to heaven." It's only once their belief in their religious understanding of life wavers, that's when they lose their mind. Thorkill is so powerful that him backing Prince Canute at one point gave the prince so much political power because no one wants to go up against Thorkill's meager 500 men, no matter how many they have on their side. This Thorkill the Tall, this ball of passion and energy that I honestly would love to give a hug. If top 10 characters I want to give a hug to, Thorkill #1. Also, top 5 anime cuddle buddies. If I get a body pillow, which I'll probably never do because yes, the weeb life is great, but it's sometimes kind of cringe. But if I do, mark my words, Thorkill will be my first choice, okay? This man is beautiful. He is a beautiful man and top 10 waifus in the history of anime. Damn, do I love this dude. And even though he's so powerful and he has everything that any Viking could even dream of having, he is still regretful that he did not follow Thor's that one day. The human mind is fascinating. The psychology behind this show fits perfectly for each individual character and for how they ended up acting the rest of their lives. Thorkill, with a wide smile, is entering every single battle, destroying countless enemies, having a great time, but there's always that resentment that he never joined Thor's and that one possibility of becoming a true warrior. Thor's living his whole life. He was happy. His children loved him. His wife loved him. The people around him loved. Thor's had a humble life where he was slowly but surely creating his own Vinland. Askeladd, despite having riches beyond his wildest dreams at certain occasions, and he was loved by all the girls in the village that he lived in and had the undying support of everyone around him, he detested them all. He detested everything about who he was and what was going on around him. I feel like the only moment in his entire life that he truly found happiness was in episode 24 of Vinland Saga. Canute became an entirely different person than the person he was growing up. It definitely benefits him in this ridiculous political environment he finds himself wound up in, but in the end of the day, it's not like it's making him a happier or better person. And then there's Thorfinn, the character that grows from the entirety of the situation around him. A character that for the longest time is a dog of Askeladd's, accomplishing in Askeladd's name as much as he can to gain enough brownie points to challenge him to a duel where he could kill him. Thorfinn is the lost puppy of Vinland Saga, and not at all the driving protagonist of the story. At least, not in the anime. The entire anime is just shaping up what Thorfinn wants for the future, and how Thorfinn will regard this personal Vinland, and it will be the saga of how he finds or does not find. Again, I have not fully caught up in the manga, but all the people I know that read the manga praise it to high heaven, saying that we didn't even get the best arc in this season, and it was still so phenomenal. Again, link to Bookwalker in the description if you want to pick it up. But the beauty is, the mindset of each of these characters that is so changed by how they're regarding their idealistic, unrealistic future is also completely different depending on where they put themselves in their mind too. It's not just about your belief system, or you deluding yourself into believing things, or whether you're telling other people things even if you know they're not true. Askeladd and King Sweyn had a very interesting conversation the first time they met. The king said to Askeladd, "Before I became the ruler of Denmark, I had so many noble ideas. I was gonna save the world. I was gonna do amazing things. I had the people in mind first and foremost. I was a selfless individual." And then he put the crown on his head, and all of a sudden, he no longer was able to obey his own wishes. He was no longer able to be the selfless person he was before. He was completely being mind controlled by the crown. Once the crown was on his head, he didn't use the crown to command. The crown used him to command. It's a completely different perspective and a completely different understanding of human nature depending on the position you are in at any given point in time. If you regard yourself as a hero, you will be that role model to everyone around you. If you regard yourself as the king, then everyone around you is just beneath you. And then there's Askeladd, the counter to King Sweyn, who completely dropped the facade of being the hero Artorias that all the legends said would eventually come. Someone who's able to look the king in the eye and say, how could such a beautiful crown rest upon such an ugly face? Now, even though I'm interpreting this story in a way that the story is saying, all right guys, look, Askeladd, total bummer of a life. Canute, unhappy prick. Thorkill regrets following Thor's. Thorfinn, just barely getting his act together now, but was a total nutcase for the entirety of the show. The only guy who actually had it figured out was Thor's, right? And the answer to that is no. While Thor's is painted in that light and how he impacted everyone, if you actually take a look at how things ended up for Thor's, well, in regards to himself, it didn't go exactly how idealistically he planned it to go. And if you look at his son and what happened to him, even the people closest to Thor's aren't people that were completely safe, snuggled into this perfect idealistic Vinland world. It worked for a bunch of years. He had a lot of years of happiness and love. Things didn't just sail smoothly after that. Vinland Saga is a show that after you learn about every single character, it makes you ponder. It makes you ponder what the right path you're supposed to be taking is. This is why I love anime. This is not just brutal badasses beating the bejesus out of each other. There's so much more going on behind the scenes. So yeah, this is a video where I was tackling all of that. You're right, I wasn't spoiling any bits of plot because I didn't even need to talk about the plot. Hell yeah, this is how you analyze a show. Sorry, I'm just patting myself on the back here a little bit because I'm trying to get back in the vibe of doing more occasional anime analyses every once in a while. You guys have been requesting them a lot and I want to do them right. But here's where Vinland Saga becomes the GOAT. Everything I've mentioned so far is preparing you for what you're about to hear. What is the right approach to Vinland? What is the right approach to a dream? What is the right approach to an ideal? The answer is, drum roll please. Everything we saw in this show was the wrong approach to an ideal. If you look at the results and what happened to everyone, no one was left with the perfect idealistic mindset that we should try to adopt in our lives because Vinland Saga is not telling you how to think. Vinland Saga is not telling you how to feel. Vinland Saga is telling you the story of Thorfinn, a character who for the first 25 episodes and the prologue of his entire life was hit dead on by these four really powerful figures, Thor's, Askeladd, Thorkill, and Canute. And he now has to pick pick and choose and figure out his own path forward, his own way where he can tackle his ideals and create the Vinland that his father so badly wanted to find. Thors is a character who relied so much on this ideal, even though he wasn't real, he almost lost track of reality, and when it was time for reality to slap him across the face, it slapped him hard. Then you have a character like Axellian, who so badly did not want anything to do with any form of falsehood and stayed in 100% realism mode. He hated the people around him, even though things were materialistically looking up for him. It's all about that blend, fam. But Axellian and Thors, despite being polar opposites for the majority of the story, actually had one pretty major similarity. One really huge thing that they had in common that really hits home exactly what you're supposed to be taking away from Vinland Saga. Right before their character arc was about to end, they both made some sort of sacrifice that I won't spoil in order to save someone that they cared about. And that was the only time that they truly found this peace with themselves. Now, Thors was always at peace with himself. That was never the issue, but if you really think about it, Axellian was always at peace with himself too. They both liked who they were, despite having ridiculously opposing ideals. But in both of their final moments of screen time, they found that balance. They found that balance of realism and idealism. And I think the really beautiful message that Vinland Saga is trying to teach us is a message that we all really can incorporate into our everyday life. It's the blend. It's not a matter of disregarding reality, because reality will catch up to you, and it's not about living in fantasy for very much of the same reason. But at the same time, without any ideals, it will eat you. And that selfless Thors moment and that selfless Axellian moment, for just the briefest amount of time, Axellian became the hero Artorias, and Thors sent his child off to live a happy life in Vinland. It's all about creating that ridiculous, impossible ideal. Because even though you won't be able to make it 100% of the ridiculous impossibility of the nature of Vinland, let's say you only make it 75% way. Let's say you're not a full hero that saves 1 million people, but you're only 75% of a hero and you save 750,000 people. If you strain yourself really hard to reach an unrealistic goal, you could still reach a realistic goal at your highest potential. Making videos on YouTube, you think I ever imagined to hit 1 million subscribers? We can all do so much more than we even begin to imagine. And it's not just about setting that bar high, and it's not just about these unrealistic ideals that we have to live with in our mind at all times. Vinland Saga is not a story about waiting for the hero Artorias to finally arrive. Vinland Saga is a story about becoming the hero Artorias. Vinland Saga is not a story about finding the mystical land of Vinland. Vinland Saga is the story about building your own personal Vinland. Vinland Saga is not about what's real or what's not real. Vinland Saga is about what's making what's not real real. Vinland Saga tells you that you can only truly find your heights when you blend idealism and realism and keep pushing it one step further. It doesn't matter whether there's a crown on your head or whether you're shackled as a slave. It doesn't matter the position you're in, and that's not what makes you who you are. Sometimes that causes you to have different responsibilities, but it doesn't make you a different person. You have to find your ideal you, and it's not the chain around your neck that's gonna command you, and it's not the crown that's upon your head that's gonna tell you right from wrong. It's what's in your mind and what's in your heart. This is a story about politics, Vikings, and a kid with massive anger management issues, and it crafted one of the most beautiful stories I've seen in the longest of times. This is why, for me, Vinland Saga has entered the realm of the anime kings. This is why Vinland Saga is easily in my top 15 anime of all time. This is why you should watch Vinland Saga if you haven't already, and why you should pick up the manga if you haven't read it yet. I once again truly appreciate Bookwalker for sponsoring this video. Link in the description to the site where you could pick up tons of different manga, including Vinland Saga, where you could become the best that you can be. Wait, wrong anime. Hope you enjoyed this video. Really glad I got to put it together. There's so many more things I wanted to mention about Vinland Saga that I couldn't without spoiling. So here you go, fam. An anime analysis, and it's long, and it's intense, and it's deep. As promised, it happened again. Subscribe for future ones. And let's just say I'll start working on another anime analysis video if you get this video to over 50,000 likes. So hit that like button. Subscribe if you're interested in future anime shiz and memes, as well as me trolling everyone because I'm bored sometimes. It happens. I apologize. I genuinely love you guys. I'll try to be your Vinland if you can be mine. Have yourselves the most wonderful evening, and remember to stay weird, fam.